Hi YouTube, Darth here. I've just finished what was an entire week filled with Battlefield 1. Today I'm going to let you know what I think about this new entry in the Battlefield franchise, what I like, what I dislike, and where I think it's going. For the most part, I've been playing the multiplayer component of the game, though I did spend about 90 minutes playing the single-player campaign as well. So my impressions are going to mostly be flavored by the multiplayer experience. Since this is taking the place of this week's yes or no video, I think I'll just summarize my experience with a yes or no call. So should you be playing Battlefield 1? Yes or no? Yes, a very emphatic yes. For what it's worth, this is probably the best day one experience we've gotten from the franchise in 5 years. The launch has been relatively showstopper free, the theme feels qualitatively different than previous titles, and for the most part, Battlefield 1 really moves the franchise forward from top to bottom. That being said, there are things that I both like and dislike. Let's start with the positives first. One of the things that Battlefield 1 has done better than many previous Battlefield titles is class balance. Each class feels unique and has a clearly defined role. While every class is capable of tackling other infantry, their specialties are quite varied. Assault is good for CQB and taking out armored vehicles. Medics keep their teammates in the game with revives and health kits. Support probably has the most anemic role, but has real punching power with the mortar and machine guns. While the scout class can not only put enemies on the map, but it can take them out from long range with a much improved bolt action sweet spot mechanic. Overall, the definition between the classes feels far superior to Battlefield 4, where everybody was sort of a muddy mess defined mostly by their gadgets. While I still think that DICE has a long way to go on character silhouettes, the classes themselves are quite distinct and each fun to play in different ways. The visuals are pretty much par for the course now with Battlefield's Frostbite engine, but the game is gorgeous. Even when I turn down all my settings to get smooth frames, I still take note of how great the game looks. From the aero weapons to the environments themselves, I think DICE has continued to outdo themselves in the eye candy department. One big step up from previous titles is the quality of the weather effects in Battlefield 1. For example, the sandstorm in Battlefield 4's Oman looked like a brown Instagram filter, and Hardline's wasn't much better. In fact, I think Hardline was worse looking. However, the sandstorm in Battlefield 1 is simply gorgeous. And it's not just beautiful, as all these weather effects have very meaningful impact on the way that these rounds play out. Rain, fog, and sandstorms all have something to contribute. Battlefield 1 definitely has the feel of Battlefield Down, although some purists may still be a bit sore about the changes to Conquest. And overall, Battlefield 1 innovates without taking away the core. Let's compare that to Hardline. I think one of the major factors in Battlefield Hardline's demise is that it simultaneously tried to be its own thing and didn't differentiate itself enough from Battlefield 4. I don't feel like Battlefield 1 suffers from the same problem. It's clear that Battlefield 1 draws, at least conceptually, from previous titles for what works well. You have gunplay that has its roots in Battlefield 3 and 4 with CQB dedicated weapons, mid-range machine guns, and long-range rifles. However, Battlefield 1 has further iterated on these formulas at a technical level that I'm not going to get into in this video, and has managed to incorporate this balance into the level design as well. And level design is something that the two previous outings definitely didn't get consistently right. Battlefield 1 gets the differentiation and iteration correct. It doesn't feel like you're playing a clone of Battlefield 4. The game genuinely feels different and improved in some aspects. Does it feel like World War I? Well, if you consider the game takes place in the latest phase of the war, it's reasonable to say these armies were already prototype World War II armies. To me, the game feels more like an HD remake of gameplay that would be more at home in Battlefield 1942. And to be honest, you wouldn't much enjoy a faithful World War I experience. DICE has done a great job of bringing together the core Battlefield experience, differentiated itself from previous titles, and stayed faithful enough to the theme to keep the game fun. But not everything in Battlefield 1 is great, and now I'd like to talk about the things that I don't quite enjoy as much as the rest. Despite having months of time spent between the release, the open beta, and the closed alpha, there are still a number of bugs that I have discovered in the game. Thankfully, these are far more sporadic than they are common. For the most part, Battlefield 1 is a bug-free experience. Take that with a grain of salt. The bugs that do happen are extremely irritating. Some of the more egregious ones that I've seen are that my weapon animations have broken after respawn, occasionally soldiers with bayonets will arrive before their telling scream does, leading me to wonder if they are supersonic, and I'm pretty sure it's a bug when my soldier yells that he's thrown a medical or support crate and doesn't throw anything at all. Overall, these are pretty trivial compared to some of the fundamental issues that Battlefield 4 launched with. Before I talk about the spawn system, I do want to call out two improvements that DICE has made. One, the visuals are really impressive. Zooming down onto your soldier from the map is a definite wow moment. 2, the behavior when spawning on squad mates is far less detrimental than previous Battlefield titles, specifically less detrimental to the player on which you're spawning. If there is a sound, it's quiet enough to not give you away, unlike Battlefield 4 where you might as well have shot 3 times into the air upon spawning. That being said, the same old awful spawn system is pretty much still intact in Battlefield 1. If you spawn on a flag, there are a number of times where the game will just put you in the middle of an empty field with a dozen enemies staring straight at you. Spawn on a squad mate and, well, sometimes you're taking your life into your own hands. And the system is taking a step back from previous titles as well, as you can no longer preview the state of your squad mate or see if you're going to spawn literally into the barrel of a tank. Thankfully, the game still prevents players from spawning directly on teammates that are in combat, though there are a number of times I've seen the game spawn a player on their squad mate who had just instantly died. That's pretty vexing if you, for example, bayonet a soldier only to have a squad mate appear directly behind you and kill you. Not really sure how the game is going to handle fixing this if it's something that happens while you're in that cool transition from map animation. It's pretty rare though, so I'm not terribly worried about it yet. If you're unaware what head glitching is, here's your quick primer. In many first-person shooter games, your player's camera is actually in your character's head. This makes sense as your character's eyes are in your head. Because your bullets come from your perspective, this generally means your bullets are essentially coming out of your eyes. When only your eyes are above cover, you can still shoot enemies regardless of where your gun is. The enemy perceives only your helmet or head shooting at them and nothing more. This is called head glitching. Now, this is something Battlefield 4 had fixed by moving the point at which characters generate bullets from the player's perspective to an area around their chest. What this does is prevent players from just barely peeking over cover and using it to shoot enemies. While in my opinion this is a perfectly legitimate tactic, it's definitely annoying for the target players who don't really have a fair chance of spotting the enemy before they die. It also doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you're expecting to see a weapon and instead all you see is a helmet shooting at you. Now, you could probably make arguments for or against this system, but I'd argue that it doesn't really make the game better in any way. It just happens to be a side effect of a lack of game development effort. This can then be exploited or perhaps utilized for player gain. Either way, I'm not a fan when I particularly think Battlefield 4 did it better. I'm not sure what happened to air balance and optimization post-open beta, but I'm pretty sure the aircraft have found a new low in the franchise. First off, whatever is going on here is just some wretched prediction from the game engine about the enemy aircraft's position. I suspect it's due to latency on the other player's part. While that's sort of the worst example of what I've seen in Battlefield 1's air latency, I see a lot more micro-stuttering and teleportation of aircraft. It makes pursuing enemies that are lagging pretty much impossible. Even tiny variations make it extremely difficult to get a shoot down. Now with the latency prediction issues out of the way, I want to talk about the balance of the aircraft. There are 3 main varieties: attack, bomber, and fighter. At some point after the beta, I talked about how the secondary gunner position was a bit boring and underpowered. Well, they're now the best position in the game. In fact, it's gone way too far. The secondary gunners in the attack plane and bomber can absolutely destroy other aircraft in the blink of an eye. A single pass or heat cycle in a fighter can't kill another airplane, especially not a bomber. However, in almost no time at all, a secondary gunner can completely destroy a fighter. You should be able to see why this is a bit difficult for fighters. In fact, I'd argue it's rendered fighters completely useless. You'd be wrong to think you can come at this tactically. Trying to come up under attack planes will only remind you that their cone of fire is nearly spherical, which makes no sense that they can shoot through their own fuselage. Additionally, you might think you can outrange them, which again only works if the secondary gunner is asleep. Fighters did anemic damage before in the beta, but the lack of survivability and complete inability to take out other aircraft make them pretty nearly useless now, unless you focus on ground targets, a role which would be better served by a bomber or attack plane, which are far more enjoyable now that you don't have to worry about fighters. But then there's that AA gun, which has a reach that extends across most entire maps. That's pretty much the good and the bad of Battlefield 1. I apologize for spending more time on the bad than the good, as the game is definitely the inverse. It's quite a bit more fun than it is a letdown, and I consider it to be the best release for Battlefield in years. Again, I didn't talk a lot about the single player because it's not really my thing and I haven't played more than an hour and a half of it. But the big question left remaining is, what is the longevity of this game going to look like? Well, I think that's squarely in EA and DICE's hands. If they support this game as well as they did the Battlefield 4 CTE with tons of content and patches, I think this game could be around for quite some time. If, on the other hand, we get really tired of the content we have before the next release dates in December and March, this game could be just that thing we played at the end of 2016. Time will tell. That's it for this impressions and review video for Battlefield 1. As I said, I'm really enjoying the game and I encourage you to give it a go if you like either Battlefield or the time period in which it's set. DICE did a splendid job with this one and I think they've learned a lot of the lessons of the last few years with only a few blemishes on an otherwise great product. If you're new around here, take a moment to check out my channel and please consider subscribing. Now that I've got a solid feel for the game, I'll be doing a lot more Battlefield 1 content in the coming days. If you like this video, be sure to force choke that like button. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, YouTube.